Hi, it's Robin with SeniorSafetyAdvice.com, and I'm here with part two of our hospice series. So stay tuned. If you haven't seen the first part, I'm going to link it up here, and then watch for all the other episodes that we have regarding hospice. We are going to answer all your questions as best as we can. So, the thing that I'm talking about today is what hospice does not tell you when you sign up for hospice care. So, first of all, hospice is an end of life care that's provided by both professionals, medical professionals, and also volunteers in some cases. Hospice is specifically for those people who have an advanced life threatening or life terminating illness, such as somebody who's in an advanced stage of cancer, or maybe somebody who's in a very advanced stage of Parkinson's disease. I'm going to read a quote from cancer.org that says that hospice helps the person accept death as the final stage of life. It does not hasten the death, nor does it postpone the death. It's just simply ensuring quality of life for both the person on hospice and for their caregivers. A hospice benefit does actually extend to the caregivers in the sense that when you have a loved one that you're taking care of who is under hospice, the hospice organization provides things like grief counseling, both while you're going through the caregiving or also at the end after the person has passed away. They help to provide advice on how to take care of the person. They help with classes and things. They help with respite care. Sometimes there is a benefit within hospice itself that allows you as the caregiver to get a break if you're overwhelmed with your caregiving duties, things like that. So it is also about you as well as the person who is under hospice care. So here are the 9 things that hospice does not tell you before you sign up for the service. The first one is that they will not recommend a treatment plan, nor will they recommend medical care. I mean, this is kind of logical if you think about it, because this person has a life limiting illness if they're going under hospice care. And so it would make sense that they're not going to provide a treatment plan or medical care per se. But it can be something that you just don't realize. When my mother had a terminal brain tumor and we put her under hospice care, I just was kind of amazed because I was so used to having her always taken care of. The doctor was always looking at what was the next thing that we were going to do, that kind of stuff. So it was a shock at the very beginning that they were basically saying, well, she's going to die, so we're just going to let it happen, and there's no intervening. So it's just something that you really need to wrap your head around if you are the caregiver of the person who's being put under hospice care. And that can lead to a lot of guilt, because then you think, well, I should be doing more for my mother in my case. But really, when you get down to it, if you're putting the person into hospice care or they're electing hospice care, they are at the end of their life, and it really doesn't make sense to try and prolong it. It's just, again, it's a mindset that you have to get into. The next thing is that people are not aware often that you can go into hospice. How do I want to say this? You can go into hospice. Usually you think you have to do it if there's 6 months or less to live. And yes, that is a criteria, but that doesn't mean that hospice care ends at the end of 6 months if the person has not passed away. So hospice care can be renewed, so to speak. It can be continuing on even if the person has gone beyond their 6 months of care. It's mostly just that once you get to that 6 months, if the person is still with us, then usually you'll have to get a doctor or somebody to reaffirm that they really indeed do have, in the medical opinion, less than 6 months left to live. Now, that being said, this varies by state. Some states do require this. In other states, the hospice just continues on. So you'll have to check with your state provider to find out, or your state, to find out what you need to do if it comes down to that. The next thing that was very shocking to me when my mother was put under hospice care is that hospice in general does not provide the medications that that person has normally been on. Now, again, this may vary between states and hospice providers, but like in my mother's case, she was put on a heavy duty steroid to try and help shrink the brain tumor. That created a very high blood sugar for her, which, like, she was already on diabetes medication, but this just threw her insulin levels, her sugar levels sky high. So I wanted her to be put on insulin. And we have a friend who is a PA, and he recommended this, a physician's assistant. He recommended that as well. But hospice absolutely would not provide for that. And once she was under hospice care, then Medicare isn't going to provide for that either, because by having hospice, you have elected not to receive any more medical care. So again, it's something to wrap your head around because it just wasn't something that we expected. The next thing that was kind of a shock to us, hospice will not set up a reminder for the person to take any medications that they are on. And in fact, they may tell you to take the person off of certain medications. Again, depends on the hospice provider. They also will not have anybody come out to dispense those medications. So, for somebody maybe who's in the final stages of life, depending on their cognitive situation or even their physical situation. My mother was cognitively aware, but she was not able to, she was in a wheelchair and had a lot of mobility problems. She wasn't able to set up and take her own medications. My father gave them to her, but if you were alone and couldn't do them on your own, hospice does not provide somebody to come out and give you your medications. So again, just something to think about. One of the biggest shockers, and the next thing that I'm going to talk about, is how little time hospice actually spends with the patient once the person is under hospice care. Now, at the beginning, my mother was given 4 to 6 weeks to live when she was diagnosed, and she lived for 3 months, thank heavens, because it was so nice to have her that extra time, have her with us. But at the very beginning, they told us they're coming out every other week, and that's it. And I'm thinking, but she's a brain tumor patient. She deteriorated very quickly. She went in one weekend from walking all over the place to in a wheelchair, because that's how fast the brain tumor progressed. And it didn't matter. They were not coming out. As long as she didn't seem to have any issues, they were not coming out to check on her. Again, that kind of circles back to the guilt, because then you feel like, what did I just do? I want my mother to be taken care of. And yet that's the whole thing with hospice, is that they aren't receiving that medical care because their illness is life limiting. So you have to think about that. When my mother got to the more advanced stage, like, a month and a half, 2 months later, then the hospice nurse came and checked on her weekly. But again, only weekly. So my father, who had no idea how to take care of anybody, because he came from the generation when my mother took care of him, he didn't have to do anything. So he was floundering, and he was really basically the one who was her primary caregiver and just had no idea what he was doing about anything. So it was a very confusing and upsetting thing on top of a confusing and upsetting time. So again, just know, even when she was actively dying, my mother, they didn't come to check on her. They would call us every day and say, when in that last week of her life, how is she doing? Do you need us to come out? But we did everything. I can remember she had difficulty breathing, and they said to us, okay, we've left you with morphine and oxygen. You go ahead and put that machine on and give her the oxygen. And then this is how much morphine dosage you should give her. I'm administering morphine, or my father. I mean, that just really was very freaky for us. And so again, something I want you to be aware of. The next thing that hospice doesn't tell you is that it isn't always covered by Medicare or Medicaid. Usually it is, but you don't want to sign arbitrarily to put them under hospice care until you know for sure whether your insurance is going to cover it or not. Hospice runs somewhere, depending on where you are, between, for in-home care, between $165 and maybe $225 a day for in-home. If you're in a hospital setting, because some hospitals in bigger cities have a hospice wing, If the person is in a hospital, it's like $1,200 a day. So it can add up very quickly. And if you're not covered or not covered as much as you think you are, that can run into some big financial considerations. So just be sure before you start that you know that you are covered. The next thing to talk about is that the quality of care can vary from one hospice agency to another. So we didn't realize, I thought hospice was like an umbrella term and that it was the same everywhere. But that's not true. Most cities have at least 2 or 3 hospice providers that you can choose from. Bigger cities are going to have even more. So before you sign up with the very first one, make sure that you check with several of them to find out what are they going to provide. Will they be providing any hospital equipment? Like if you're at home, my mother had a hospital bed and my mother was given a wheelchair, but not all of them will provide that. So you do want to make sure that you interview several agencies to find out which one is the best fit for your loved one. And then, speaking of that, the next thing that kind of we were surprised about is that not always does hospice provide a durable medical equipment type of a thing. Now, again, we knew because we had asked this provider, so we knew we could get a hospital bed, we knew we could get a wheelchair. We got like a portable commode for the bedside, things like that that were covered under her hospice plan, but not all plans have that. Another thing that they don't necessarily cover is an IV to replace fluids. So if you have a loved one who's under hospice care and they're dehydrated, you're not going to get an IV that's going to help to rehydrate them because, again, this is leading towards the end of their life, and so their hospice is not going to do anything to help extend that life. So I don't want to put you off of hospice care because I think that it is a very good program and it is something that many people need as they reach those final stages of life. Again, the benefits there's a lot of benefit to the caregiver. There's a lot of support for us, even though the nurse did not come all the time to see my mother. If I needed to call her at any time of the day or the night, I could do that. It's just for us, because my mother had in-home care, we felt like we were kind of, we had support, but we were less supported than we thought we were going to be, if that makes sense. So be aware of that. And even if the person is in a hospital setting, hospitals are very busy. Hospice patients are in the end stages. So they're not the ones necessarily that get the attention in a very busy hospital, especially if the hospital is understaffed. So again, just something to think about. I just don't want you to enter into hospice care like we did, where we just kind of figured it was a continuation of the medical care and the hospital settings and things that she had had at the very beginning of her diagnosis, and that really wasn't the case. It was a wonderful program. It helped her very much in the end, but there were a lot of things that we would have changed had we known, especially our mindset. So anyway, I think hospice is wonderful, but I wanted you to be aware of the things that you probably weren't aware of. So anyway, if this video has been helpful to you, please give us a thumbs up. And if there's somebody that you know that really needs this information, please be sure to share it with them. That helps to keep this video in front of more people so that more people can get the benefit from it. And please don't forget to subscribe to our channel. The subscription button is down in the corner. And then also hit that notification bell so that you don't miss any of our informative videos. And till the next video in this series, thank you very much for watching. Take care. Bye-bye.